This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And as many of you know, Avoid the Maze is about talking about your journey. And um, your journey may not be exactly like mine, but you know what? Somewhere along that path, we're going to start seeing some very similar things in our lives. And when we do, it makes us feel a little bit empowered. Not empowered that we're better than anybody else, but you know what? Everything can be okay. There are ways of making that path just a little smoother. However, my guest today, Darci Steiner, when she sent me the information about her path, my eyes rolled back in my head a couple of times. Um, and I'm so glad you're smiling, Darcy, because, um, sometimes when we write out what we've been through, it's like, whose story am I writing? That couldn't have all happened to me. But the reality of it is, um, all those things do happen in our lives. So, welcome to Avoid the Maze. Hopefully, some of what you've been through, can be a light for us to say, hey, how can I do that a little bit differently? And so, welcome and tell us just a little bit about who you are.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen, for having me today and appreciate it so much. So I am Darci Steiner, a Colorado native, although I lived in California for 4 years with my husband before we had kids. And we were there during kind of a rough time during the Northridge quake and riots. And oh my goodness, it was a scary time to live in Los Angeles, but we survived.
Yeah.
And moved back to Colorado to have our kids. So anyway, I have a lot of stories. I have 2 kids. They're grown. And I have a granddaughter.
Oh, how exciting is that?
Yeah, she's 9 months old, and she is the joy of our week. So my husband Mark and I, we get to go over weekly and watch her grow and change. And it's so different watching a granddaughter grow up than your own kids, because so much happens in a day, when they're growing, that you just watch. But when you don't watch it every day and you see the weekly change, oh my goodness, it's so much growth happens in a week. So we just enjoy being grandparents.
That is wonderful. Absolutely. And I'm sure she enjoys having grandma and grandpa come, stay with her as well.
Well, she likes to wave now. So she waves hello and goodbye.
Uh,
And yeah, we just play.
well, that's what grandparents are supposed to do. You did all the work with your kids, so now it's fun time.
Yeah.
So,
So
one of the things you mentioned is that in your early marriage, you lived during a time that you didn't have, you couldn't have changed it. Okay. I mean, earthquake is a natural disaster, and the rioting back then in California, I'm sure that wasn't part of your doing, but there you are, and you're caught in the middle of it. Um, did you feel like running, back to Colorado at that time?
oh my goodness. Yes and no. Yes, because Colorado just felt safer. It was more familiar, but we were also out for an experience, you know, and we only knew Colorado. Both of us are from Colorado.
Okay.
So it was an adventure. We got married there, actually. We made our whole family come out to California. We would have done that differently. But yeah, I mean, the earthquake was scary, we lived next door to a fire station.
Oh, wow.
And so
Yeah.
all the alarms were going off, and everybody in California has a car alarm, right? So all the car alarms were going off. Our bed was I felt like I was in a snow globe and we were being shaken
Oh,
and the
wow.
bed was just going up and down because it was early morning. And we just, my husband just held on to me while I was screaming.
Well, that's what husbands are supposed to do. So that's a
Yeah,
good thing.
yeah. So, and then the rioting, that made me think. That really made me think because um, I was watching cars be lit on fire. I was coming down, picking my husband up from work, coming down um, a mountain, kind of a hill, and looking across the landscape and seeing fires everywhere, and then there was the looting. And so it was like, is this for real? Are we living in a tale or another country?
Yeah.
Just it didn't feel real. But it was, and we survived together. Our first 4 years, we survived in LA together, and I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it. I think suffering helps us to grow, and I feel like that suffering that we went through then helped prepare us for future suffering.
And as people are listening to this, one of the things that I want to point out is that sometimes when we're going through those tragic things, um, we know that they're not good, but we still are trying to do the daily things that we do. And sometimes we try to put blinders on just to get through it. Because, you know, if there's nothing you can physically do, you can't stop the earthquake. When the earthquake is over, yes, there's some cleaning up that you have to do. Um, and so you have to go about somewhat of a routine. Your routine is not the same as it was the day before, but you create a routine. And then when you see things going on in your city that um, are affecting you, but from a distance, you start making choices there too. And your journey probably was a little bit different. There probably were places that you wouldn't travel to, especially at certain times of day, just to be safe. So as people listen, it's really important to understand that sometimes we don't realize what great surviving skills we really have.
Right, right. Like children can adapt to change. I think we forget we can as adults.
Exactly.
Children are resilient. You put them in a different situation and they thrive. Like we can do it too. And we forget because we're so ingrained with our routine. But that's why it was healthy for us to go and to stay and not run away from that, because it did help us grow in ways that we needed to. And it did bond our marriage, you know, because we had to rely on each other more and, really have some deep conversations like,
Yep.
What's our day going to look like? And even are we going to survive this sometimes?
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
know, because there were times we had to go drive out at night during the riots and we kept our faces straight ahead. We didn't look at the car next to us and we just made it to our destination. And and with the earthquakes, when went under an overpass, we were like, okay, come on, light, turn green, turn green. We don't want to be under this underpass anymore, or
I
this
under
overpass anymore. So yeah, I mean, you realize different things and what people in other cultures go through daily. Like we are so spoiled in America, this was good for us.
well, so that was the beginning of your journey, but that's not even a fraction of what you've been through.
True, true.
So when you went back to Colorado, um, what was the deciding factor that it was time to go back?
Well, I had gotten pregnant
Okay.
and we decided we didn't want our kids growing up in the alley of our apartment because we would never have been able to afford a house in California. So, and grandparents, both of our parents were back here. So I was, I think, 5 months pregnant when we moved back with my first daughter. And we have two daughters, like I said. And so I wanted to be home with them. And so I started a daycare and chose to be with my kids and help some other parents work and did a daycare. But at that time, all I wanted to do was be a parent. I just wanted to soak it up and pour in. I just wanted to pour into these kids and be there for them. So I didn't work outside of the home. And then we had our second daughter 2.5 years later. And when she was 2.5, then another suffering happened. It was around Christmas time. This was 1999. And I wanted to listen to Christmas music. It was just before Christmas. So I ran up the stairs in our home to get a CD so that the kids and I could listen to a CD. And as I was running back down the stairs, I slipped on a piece of paper. And so I was tumbling down the stairs. Somehow I hurtled, almost hurled too. I hurtled over the baby gate and slammed into a wall and face planted into the ground and injured my back. So my kids were there. And my oldest daughter, she had just turned 5, and she came over to me, and I was just face planted on the floor and my back was killing me. And she's like, "Mommy, are you okay?" And of course, you tell your kids, "Yes, I'm okay," because she's 5 and the other one's 2.5, and you don't want them to worry, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I wasn't okay. I was, in fact, bedridden for 2 years after that. And then in a wheelchair for 2.5 more years after that. So what happened when I was bedridden was I developed a nerve pain disorder called complex regional pain syndrome. And that is a nerve pain disorder that causes you to be so sensitive to touch that even a sheet just kills you. Like, I couldn't have a bed sheet touch me. So here I am, a mom, right? And a sheet hurts to touch me.
Wow.
Kids need touch, right? And husbands,
Right.
And I couldn't be a mom or a wife the way that I always thought I would be. My life had changed, and here they are pouring into me. I mean, my little 5-year-old is heating up rice bags for me to keep me warm, and she has to push a chair over to the microwave to be able to reach it. Heats these bags up, and she would make a dinner of like heating up macaroni and cheese on the stove and cutting up carrots for her little 2-year-old sister, 2.5-year-old sister. Like, it was so precious, the things that they learn, but like we talked about being adaptive, being to our situation,
Right.
adapted, they're pliable, they're flexible. Yeah. And so my 2.5-year-old didn't really, we didn't skip a beat. She climbed on bed and we played with her little animals, and I just couldn't be touched as much. So we still played together, still interacted. I still did hold her in my arms and, kind of beside her, where her full weight wasn't on me, but I was still able to cuddle with her. And Jenny as well, but she was a little bit older and could understand, better. So I not only had that condition, but I was losing a lot of weight. So what that did was it made me malnourished, and that almost killed me. I almost died because I didn't feel like eating. When you are in so much pain, like any of us when we get sick,
Right.
we're not hungry.
Right.
So imagine that going on for 2 years, and I weighed 100 pounds, which isn't, horrible, but it's not good, and
Well, and 100 pounds being bedridden is
yeah,
a lot of, is not good. 100 pounds, and if you were out there exercising and moving, you would have some muscle.
yeah,
And I'm sure you lost all your muscle at that point.
I did. Everything atrophied, and I couldn't even smile. Like, I remember trying to smile, and my cheeks would just quiver, because I lost all my muscle mass. Um, so yeah, I mean, doctors didn't expect me to live because each week I would lose more weight. But here's the clincher. So 3 weeks prior, I had begun studying prior to my fall down the stairs.
Sure.
And studying for a master's program in nutrition. So I had nutrition books. Yeah, I had a pile of nutrition books waiting for me. And for the first, 2 years, I was in way too much pain to be able to do anything. But then I was able to sit up for a couple minutes because I was working on lifting 1-pound weights while I was laying in bed and, sitting up for a few minutes at a time. And so for 5 minutes, I would read and I would underline and study. And I did this one step at a time, like literally a paragraph at a time. And I came across this protein shake, and I asked my husband to make it, and I was able to drink it and keep it down, and I liked it and I looked forward to it. So this protein shake saved me. God saved me, but he threw this protein shake.
Right,
I
sure.
began to eat again, right?
Yep.
And put on some weight, gained a few pounds, and I gained some hope.
So as I'm listening to you, I'm sure there are people out there that are suffering from some sort of ailment. Um, and when you talk about, not being able to be touched, um, right after I got married to my husband, we're together 40 years, but married 37. The night before our wedding, I have migraines, and I got a horrible migraine the night before the wedding. And how we got through the wedding, I have no idea. When I look at the video, it's like, I don't even know who that person is. But from that point, I started developing fibromyalgia. So I know what it means not wanting to be touched. But I didn't have the fibromyalgia 24/7. I wasn't bedridden. So as I listen to you, it's like, I just can't imagine
Mm.
having two young children and wanting to really be able to play with them and do the things that you want to do. And like you said, you were a young wife, you wanted to be there for your husband, but trying to tell somebody that just a small touch
Mhm.
makes your pain worse. What did family and friends think? Were they
Um,
supportive?
you know, People expect you to get better. There's an expectation that, oh, well, she was injured a couple weeks ago. She should be improving, right?
Right.
So I would tell people, well, when there was some sort of improvement, even just a little bit, I would say, yes, I'm getting better. And I learned not to say that because getting better means I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wasn't fine. But yeah, it's hard when people have an expectation that you get better because some people don't. And I think that's important to remember is, probably not the best question to ask somebody is, how are you feeling? Because like you with fibromyalgia, well, you're not always feeling well. And so you want to be honest, right? But you also don't want to disappoint their day,
You got it. Absolutely.
right? So I think we need to be more creative in the questions that we ask people who are ill, or who have fibromyalgia or another illness, and be creative. One of my favorite questions is, what have you learned today? You know,
Interesting.
I love that question, and I teach that. I wrote that in my book, that it's a good question to ask people, because whether you're sick or not, you can answer that question. We all learn something, right?
Absolutely.
Also felt like, so my husband and I were leaders in a church. Um, and I felt like when that fall happened and I was no longer able to serve, I felt useless. And I felt like people looked at me as the person that needed to be given to, and that I had nothing to give. But what I felt is I had more to give. I felt I had more to give because I felt like I gained some wisdom. And, I was young when this happened. I was 35. And so when you're 35, you know, people don't really ask you, or they don't go through things in life that are really, really, really hard, like somebody who's older might
Right.
have, especially physical ailments, right? And so I craved to give. And there's a few people who would sit and listen. But most people, people move on with their life, which, I don't expect people to just stop their life
Right.
and pay attention to mine. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, people who are sick have wisdom. You have wisdom to give to people who are going to experience pain at some point in their life, right?
Love that.
Yeah. And so we need to listen to disabled people. We need to listen to not just physically, but depressed people. We need to listen to homeless people, any kind of suffering. We need to listen because we can learn.
And that's one of the main reasons that I do this podcast, because one of the things that you're showing me is that you were in this maze. Okay. You know, one minute you're running up the steps and everything's fine. Next minute, you know, an accident, and they say accidents happen close to home, and there you go, you have that accident. And I'm sure when you laid there with your face planted in the floor and feeling the pain, somewhere in the back of your mind, I'm sure you thought, well, somebody's going to help me and I'm going to get over this, and you know I'll be ready for Christmas and everything's going to be fine, because that's what most of us do. We don't
Mhm,
see this as, oh my God, I'm going to be bedridden for 2.5 years. And then when it happened that you were bedridden, um, it sounds like you tried whatever you could do to normalize that situation. And it's not normal to have a young mom in bed for 2.5 years, watching her kids grow up. Um, your 5 year old, I'm sure, was ready to go off to kindergarten, if not in kindergarten. And, you
mhm.
know, I'm sure you wanted to be there, rather than having her come say goodbye to you at the bedside. And I find that when these things happen in our life that change us, we are much stronger. But if the people around us expect that strength to cure us overnight, like family and friends were probably, well, hey, Darcy, come on, just sit up, and, you know, fling your feet over the side of the bed and all the things you wanted to do,
Mhm.
but you knew you weren't ready.
Yeah, what's coming to my mind is there was one person who did say something to me that did help motivate me to change something. And what he did, so he was crying. This was a friend of mine, and people would come and visit, and they thought this was the end for me. And my husband, I mean, we were all preparing for this is the end for me. And what he said to me was, Darcy, can you lift 1 pound? Can you lift a 1 pound weight? And I said, I don't know. And he said, why haven't you tried?
Hmm.
So I asked Mark to get me 1 pound weights, and I began to do exercises from the bed and lifting these 1 pound weights. So there was something that I could do that I didn't know I could do that helped me. So, there are expectations from people, and there are really people that have something to give you. So it's important to listen to them. And yes, I received like a pile of business cards of doctors.
I'm sure
Like,
you did.
just go to my doctor. My doctor has helped me. But what I was finding was the answers weren't in going to the doctors. The answers were in taking small steps myself, holistic steps myself. For instance, lifting 1 pound weights. For instance, reading a paragraph in my nutrition book. For instance, making a protein shake. The amino acids were helping my brain. I had a counselor who taught me how to meditate and to do progressive relaxation, to do visualization. I visualized walking again. She taught me visualize walking again. And so I would practice in my mind taking steps. So I would go for a walk every day in my mind. And that's so cool because it worked. I mean, it was part of what helped. There are a gazillion things that came together that helped me improve, but it was holistic things. And I was on a lot of medications, and I was addicted to Oxycontin.
Not unusual in our time. Yep.
So I was one of those. And my nutritionist, and please, if you're listening, don't do this on your own, but have someone help you to get off of them safely,
Absolutely.
because it's dangerous to go off by yourself.
You know, I love the comment that you said that you visualize yourself taking a walk every day. 5 years ago, my mother, at the age of 96 and a half years old, had a stroke,
Oh, wow.
and she went blind, but didn't know she was blind. Her senses told her she could see. And we were told, do not tell her she's blind because you'll have an angry woman in front of you. Um, and she did become bedridden because of it. Okay, because we couldn't rehabilitate her at that point. And so I lived with her for the 2.5 months that she stayed, she was alive. And she would ask, you know, why am I just sitting here? Can't
Oh,
we go for a ride? And she was in a hospital bed and she was laying. She wasn't sitting, but in her mind, she was sitting. And I said, okay, mom, where do you want to go? And just about every day, we visualized taking
wow.
a drive. And I swear she really believed she was in the car. I had to visualize more than her because it was like, how do I make this real?
Sure.
But I realized how much fun I actually was having because I was meeting her where she needed to be, but at the same time, I was giving her a totally different view,
Yes.
and it helped me. And again, there was no way I was going to say, "Oh, you'll be better tomorrow," because a couple of times she'd say, I'm really not feeling well. Is there anything really wrong?" No, you know what? We all have those days. And she'd go, "Yeah, I guess you're right." Um, but she would ask me because she knew that I was a migraine sufferer. And every day she'd ask me, "Are you in
Mm.
pain today?" Because she could sense my headaches.
Wow.
So there are people who can give to us.
Mhm.
And if we're aware, we can take that. And like you did with the weights, I'm sure when you probably first heard it, you probably thought this guy was maybe a little nuts. Like, why would you lift a weight when you hurt so much?
And I was a little embarrassed. I was like, wow, I've been trying all these things. I tried so many supplements and I couldn't figure it out. And when he said that, I was like, yeah, let me try that. And, he was right. And part of what made me try it was he was crying. I mean, he was really hurting over this. And we weren't that close of friends, is the thing. But he was like, just try this, just try 1 pound. And then 1 pound eventually became 2 pounds and then 3 pounds, you know. So it helped me to get my muscle back, you know.
Absolutely. So you went from being bedridden to also being in a wheelchair.
Hmm.
Um, when you got into the wheelchair, did you think, well, hey, I've progressed and this is going to be the best it's going to be? Or did you think I progressed and there's still more in front of me?
I had no idea if I was ever going to walk again. No idea, because I still had the CRPS. And yes, I could sit up more, and I was working on my upper body, you know, and I can sit up now. And so, yeah, I'm in the wheelchair, but I still had no idea if I could walk. But what I did do was, at the advice of um, someone else, was pool therapy. So I got in a therapy pool, and I'll never, ever forget, Karen, the first day that I put one foot in front of the other in the pool. It was magical. And it was like you miss the feeling of walking, but you also forget how to walk when it's been that long. Your brain forgets. And that's what kind of scared me, was like, I have to relearn how to walk. But I did. I did, in the water. And my husband brought me to pool therapy twice a week. And my kids played at the side of the pool. So they were able to be with us and watch mommy get better, right? And I was able to interact as I walked back and forth on either side. And then eventually I was able to take a few steps on land. And a few years later, I had no pain. And the reason I had no pain was because as all this was going on, I was still studying. I was able to study more and more and more. So I was incorporating various nutrition holistic practices and earned my master's degree in holistic nutrition. I was my first client.
That's the best client to have.
I was my case study. But no, it was a 4-year program, but because of my circumstance, the college gave me a couple more years to complete it. So very graciously they did that. But so I was able to say my CRPS disappeared, which is very, very uncommon. If you get CRPS, you can expect to have it the rest of your life. So I opened a nutrition practice, began seeing clients, and eventually started teaching sports nutrition at the local high school. And by this time, my kids are in high school. So they were part of the program. So they saw me come full circle. And now I'm teaching them sports nutrition and, of course, practicing at home with them because they were both soccer players and seeing clients. And one of my clients became a nutritionist. I helped some kids with anorexia um, come out of that, and mostly weight loss programs, but I'm still a nutritionist. I'm still licensed. I have a practice that I practice part-time because I wrote a book. So I've been spending a lot of time on that.
So this is what I marvel about is many of us who have been through a maze of heartbreaks and um, medical issues and life changes. Um, Something sort of clicks and will tell us, you know what, this is what you're really meant to do. This is what you need to do. Number one, it can help you get better. I don't think we ever think of it as we're going to be cured because, we don't know. If we had that crystal ball, we may have gone that direction sooner.
Yeah.
But I found the same thing for me, that all the emotional pains I felt the majority of my life, once I decided that, hey, I can't do what I was doing before, I have to take a new direction. And I searched for it. I asked questions. I listened. I became more aware of things. And then it was like, hey, I don't have all that heavy weight on me anymore. It's not that life is perfect 24/7, because I'm sure you'd say the same thing, that's just not realistic. But we know the things that we need to do for ourselves. We can share that with others. And maybe somebody else wouldn't, even if they followed your same path, it may not have worked 100% for them. But if they were listening and aware and working at it, they would find their path. And that's why your story is so important, because it's not about giving up. Okay. When our time is up, our time is going to be up. We're not going to have a choice. Okay. This afternoon, I lost an acquaintance who battled cancer for 2.5 years. And the last couple weeks have been just mind wrenching for him and his wife. And so the handwriting was sort of on the wall, but he had some good days and then he had some lows. And he didn't know when his time was, but when his time was today, as heart wrenching as it is, he fought a beautiful battle. And I'm sure he and his wife talked about a lot of the ups. The same way, I'm sure you and your husband, your family, when things were getting better, hey, we see this, but you know what? We can't get overly enthusiastic, because where else is it going to go? And I'm sure that's something that your clients probably understand as well.
Yeah. There's no guarantees. Every day we just do the best that we can. And sometimes we stumble upon that thing that helps us. I used to think that there was only one way of getting better, and I had to do everything to find that one thing. But there's more than one way, of reaching whatever getting better is for someone.
Right.
And So yes, people have success with weight loss, but that doesn't mean they don't keep trying. It's not
Right.
like, okay, I've lost the weight. Now I can do away with what Darci taught me.
Yeah.
You have to keep on it. You have to keep up with it. But even then, life is unpredictable. Things happen, For me, when I lost my mom, I lost weight because I wasn't hungry. When I lost my dad, I was hungry, so I overate. It's just, there's no guarantee, and things happen, but we do the best that we can. And, I'm sure with your migraines and your fibromyalgia, I have fibromyalgia too, by the way.
I'm sure you
Um,
do.
yeah. And, but we try different things, and we have conversations, and, we just take stepping stones. And I think it's really important to remember that that's what it is. A stepping stone is okay. A stepping stone leads somewhere. It's okay if other people are taking big steps and they're making big strides. Who's to say that your small step that day wasn't bigger than someone who ran
Oh,
a marathon?
I mean, you are so right. I did a podcast with another gentleman from Podmatch, and he was talking about success. And success to him um, is being able to work 4 days a week and have 3 days off.
Mm,
And he has found a way to do that. And he's very happy. It makes him joyous. And you know, I thought about it. I'm not a good, I don't really enjoy a lot of downtime. I like to be doing things. And so, as after I did the podcast, I thought about it and I said, I now see how we are all so different because I basically work 7 days a week at something, but the some things I'm working at, I love doing.
it's
So,
not-
you know, when somebody looks at me and goes, "Don't you ever take time off?" Well, even doing a podcast like this, you know, I don't need to take time off because I'm enriching myself. I'm learning about you. I'm learning that, you know what? There are other things out there that can make us feel better. We don't always have to take a handful of prescription drugs. Sometimes initially we may have to, but it doesn't have to be the rest of our life. And the nutritional, you know, uh, shake that your husband made for you, um, I might make it and I might gag on it. On the other hand, I might make it and I might love it. My brother made me one day and it was like, oh my God, like get that away. But but I make other ones myself, okay?
yeah,
And they make me feel good.
yeah,
And I drink them from a nutritional standpoint. It's not anything to cure anything. It's like, you need your fruits and vegetables. And so there's some good ways to drink those fruits and vegetables. Um, and again, that's being aware and listening and watching how other people get through this. What I would love to do is have you back on so we can talk about your book. But before that, tell people about a little bit about the book right now.
okay, just a teaser.
Yeah.
So it's called Beauty Beyond the Thorns: Discovering Gifts and Suffering. And it's a book about some of the stories about my sufferings in my life, as well as other people. And I share stories also that are in the Bible about people who go through hard times, and I parallel them. And it's a lighthearted book. It's not a heavy suffering book, you know. There's humor in it. And there's short chapters for people who are hurting, or just, it just helps the flow go faster. But anyway, it's available on Amazon, and it's for people who go through any type of suffering, no matter short or long. It's just to help provide hope. Hope is the main message.
Well, and hope can take us very far.
Mhm.
And, and I heard you mention, the loss of your parents. And I agree. Different reactions with both of my parents as well. Um, Loved them both dearly and questioned myself, why did I do that one time and didn't do it the second time or whatever? Um, and those are things that sometimes can, mess up our brain. And you know what? Sometimes we can't control some of the things that are going through there. We have to just stop, take a breath,
Right.
listen, and move on. So, Darci, I'm going to be in touch with you so we can have you back on. But how can people find you in the meantime?
Okay, so my website is Darci, Darci J, just the initial J, Steiner, Steiner.com, DarciJSteiner.com.
Well, we will definitely put that in the show notes. And I will send you an email. We'll get you scheduled for another show. And it's possible we may have another guest on because the two of you, I think, between both of your books, could really help a lot of people.
Mm.
So I will mention that in the email and give you a little bit more information and introduce you to her via email. And let's just see how many people we can touch and help through whatever pain they're going through.
That'd be awesome. Thank you
Well,
so much.
thank you. Have a great day and give that baby a hug for me next week, okay?
Oh, of course. I
I
would love to.
I appreciate that. Have a good day. Bye bye
Thank
now.